boundaries. That's the significance of this problem. Recently, increased attention has been given to this issue to explore its prevalence and incidence rates, as well as the consequences associated with such experiences. History of child abuse in women is a crucial experience and a factual problem for some reasons. 3 of these reasons are summarized in here. First, the family members are the only witnesses of this experience, and the abuse experience mainly remains unannounced because it's confined to the family. Next, or second, victims are mainly females. Most victims of domestic violence, childhood domestic violence, are females. And the literature supports that, knowing that females are more vulnerable to childhood abuse victimization compared to males. And that does not say that males are excluded from experiencing this problem. They're victims also. Third, having a history of childhood abuse experiences increases a woman's likelihood of adulthood victimization, and the literature highly supports this fact. Children or any person who experiences childhood abuse is vulnerable to adulthood violence and domestic violence mainly, because we're focusing on domestic violence. Because they will be, women, when they grow up, they will be at some point under the control of a male partner who may practice abuse against them. When they marry, when they engage to somebody, they will be in control from that partner, and they may experience intimate partner violence from that partner. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and neglect are examples of common types of childhood abuse or experience of abuse experienced by children. These are, types of abuse. Several studies have been conducted to assess the prevalence of childhood abuse history among women. If you search the literature, you'll find many. Okay. For example, in one study, 51 of the participants in study in the south of Sweden reported experiences of abuse in their childhood. Adult women were interviewed, and 51% of them revealed this experience. In Jordan, the prevalence rates of childhood psychological abuse and physical abuse were 35.1% and 19.6% respectively. This study was recently published in 2016. Perpetrators, the abusers of childhood abuse are mainly the mothers and fathers, and sometimes siblings are also possible perpetrators of violence. Experiencing childhood abuse increases women's physical and mental health problems. There is a strong association between childhood experiences of abuse and women's experiences of mental health problems. Experiencing childhood abuse increases women's susceptibility of further adulthood victimization. This is a second fact, which means that women who experience childhood domestic violence are susceptible to have domestic violence in adulthood, as well as experiencing various physical and psychological health problems. Why we're doing this study? In one study targeting Jordanian working women, the prevalence rates of depressive symptoms and stress were 51% and 36.7% respectively. If you look at these numbers, they're alarming. They're saying something. Also, up to our knowledge, we did not find studies examining the relationship between childhood experiences of violence and the subsequent development of mental health problems in Jordan, because the literature says that there is an association, but in here, we did not find studies supporting this fact or this association. So, the study was conducted to explore the relationship between women's history of experiencing different types of abuse during childhood and the development of mental health problems in adulthood. We're studying the association that we did not find in Jordanian women in the literature. Okay. For the method, The study was a cross-sectional investigation targeting women visiting healthcare centers under the administration of Jordanian Ministry of Health in 3 cities, 3 big cities in Jordan: Amman, Irbid, and Zarqa. The participants were women attending these healthcare centers for the purpose of obtaining medical treatment, vaccination. I mean, women seeking any type of care, women waiting for any type of care in healthcare centers in any of these cities where our target population. Inclusion criteria, who was included in this study? We included just women. Women has to be committed to an intimate partner, a male intimate partner, whether that partner was a husband or a fiancé. She has to be committed to a partner. Second, women who were recruited were those visiting a healthcare center to obtain one of the services provided by these healthcare centers, and women had to be able to read and write because it was a paper and pencil study. Also, women had to not be accompanied by her male partner because we were afraid of getting like biased responses. Okay. Data collection. The study was approved by the Hashemite University and the Ethical Legal Committee of the Jordanian at the Jordanian Ministry of Health, because our setting was community or primary healthcare centers and under the administration of Ministry of Health. Women were approached in waiting rooms. As I said, women who were seeking any service from these healthcare centers were approached. Consent from the participants was we seek for, consent from the participants. Participation in the study was totally voluntary. We did not enforce any woman to participate in the study, and those who refused to participate were informed that they will be treated as usual, without any harm. Withdrawal from the study was an option. I mean, if the woman started answering the questions, and at one point she decided to stop, she was allowed to do that. And also we seeked anonymous data, because we did not ask about the name, why she was in here, at the healthcare center. She was not asked to provide any ID, nothing. We were seeking just data. Okay. The measures. According to or based on our purpose, we used the following measures. The Center for Epidemiological Studies Depression Scale, it's a 20 items scale used to measure depressive symptoms in women. The items were rated on a 4-point scale. The final score for the scale ranged from 0 to 60. Chromax alpha in Jordanian women was 0.90. It was high. It was reliable. The perceived stress scale also, it was a 10 items scale. It measures psychological stress among adults. Each item was rated on a 5-point scale. The final scale ranged from 0 to 40. Significant correlation with depressive symptoms. I mean, the scale was valid. Anxiety subscale was part of a larger scale, the depression, anxiety, stress scale. So we used the subscale, the anxiety subscale. It was a 10 items scale. It was rated on a 4-point severity rating or severity scale. The total anxiety score ranged from 0 to 42, and the validity was supported also for this scale. For the subscale and for the total scale. I mean, depression, anxiety, stress scale is one scale, and we use the subscale of this instrument. The Rosenberg self-esteem scale, it is a 10 items scale. Each item was rated on a 5-point rating scale. The ranges for this, the final score was ranged between 10 and 50, and Cronbach's alpha for the scale was 0.64. That's the psychological part of the study. For women's experiences of childhood abuse, we used the following questions. Physical abuse, a variety of abuse tactics were adopted from a previous study. I mean, this study in Shaw and Crow, 2002, they had a set of items measuring physical abuse. So we adopted these tactics and we used them in our study. The responses of this scale were coded to or dichotomized to 0 and 1. 0 means that the woman was not a victim of childhood abuse, physical abuse, and 1 means that she experienced at least one incident of childhood abuse, physical abuse. For sexual abuse, also, the women were asking to report whether they were sexually abused during childhood by an adult, whoever that adult was. And it was coded also as 0 and 1. 0 means that she was not a victim, and 1 means that she was a victim. Emotional abuse also included questions such as if the woman as a child was called names or she was humiliated, and the final score also was coded to 0 and 1. Childhood neglect, including women's report of not having a person who loved them, not having a person who cared about them as a child, when she was a child, or when they were children. And also the scale was coded for as 0 or 1. 0 means that she wasn't a victim of neglect, she never experienced neglect, and 1 means that she experienced neglect. Analysis, we use descriptive analysis to describe the variables, whether they were continuous or categorical variables. And one way between groups multivariate analysis of variance, MANOVA, was implemented to explore differences in mental health consequences based on women's abuse experiences. The results. This summarizes the descriptives of our sample. 42% were between the ages of 31 to 40, middle-aged women. Okay, 91% were women who had children. University degree was earned by 36%, 35 or 36% earned high school diploma or less, 63% reported medium socioeconomic status, 84 declared living in a city, and the rest were living in villages or camps, and 25% possessed a job outside home. That means that 75% were housewives, yes. Results, as we said, we use descriptive statistics for describing the variables. Here's the independent variables and dependent variables. The independent variables were physical abuse, sexual abuse, childhood abuse variables. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. And the dependent variable were depression, stress, anxiety, and self-esteem. If you look at the independent variables, you'll see that almost half of the participants, like 46%, were experienced physical abuse as children. Women reported that they were victims of physical abuse in the past. And 47% reported emotional abuse. The lowest percentage was for sexual abuse. 1.3% of the women reported that they were victims of sexual abuse. Okay. The result of MANOVA indicates that physical abuse, sexual abuse did not have any significant relationship with depression, stress, anxiety, and self-esteem. In the meantime, emotional abuse and neglect have a significant association. This is our main results. We'll see what the literature, how we discussed our findings. childhood emotional abuse was mostly reported by the participants. The highest, the mostly reported experience of childhood abuse was emotional abuse. And why does that happen? Or why did that happen? Because we think, unfortunately, some people use hurtful words and verbally assault their children with no attention paid to the consequences. And that is a practice. And some families, badly, they still use it. Unfortunately, they still use it. Hurtful words directed towards women as children, directed to children one day they will be adults. So hurtful words directed towards women as children are unforgettable. And women can still or can recall such experiences several years after victimization. So don't think that if you assault a child, he will forget that emotion. If you assault him emotionally, he will forget that. He will never. And it will grow with him. Okay. Physical abuse, that's about psychological abuse. Physical abuse was prevalent as well. 46% of the participants say that they were victims at one point. They were victims of physical abuse. Okay. Why? Because some people may think, why this prevalence rate is there. Some people may think that physical punishment is an effective way of disciplining children. So it's embedded in the culture, or it's embedded in some families that one way of disciplining children is to abuse them physically. And some families still use this. They discipline them physically. And physical punishment that does not leave the child bruised could be culturally acceptable. That's another explanation. Some people, they may slam the child, and they will say, okay, he will learn something. He will learn the lesson after we slam them. But that's unforgettable for the child, because when you slam him, there's no bruises persist with him. So he will learn the families think that he will learn the lesson, but with no harm associated when he gets older. But that's wrong, because it stays in their mind. Third, some people may consider the children as their own property, so they can discipline them in the way they think it's right, and that's wrong. That's wrong, because we see in our culture, if you blame a parent for disciplining, slamming his child, he will say, "That's not your business. He's my child. I know how to treat, and it's my responsibility." So this is the reason, or these are the reasons we think behind this high prevalence rate. And unfortunately, some families still have this attitude. Okay. Victims of emotional abuse and child neglect were significantly more depressed, more stressed, more anxious, and possessed lower self-esteem compared to their to non-victims. This is our main finding. Why is that? We think that one of the facts that may explain this finding is that not all types of child abuse impact mental health in adulthood. This is one of the explanations, that not all types of abuse will have the same impact on adults. That's one of the explanations. The other one is that types of abuse that do not leave the victim bruised or traumatized, such as emotional abuse and neglect, are more influential in terms of mental health sequelae or consequences in adulthood compared to other types of abuse. Because children who are emotionally abused and who are neglected, there is no physical harm, there is no physical signs or symptoms associated with such experience. So these experiences, although there is no physical trauma associated with such experience, but the psychological effect of these types of abuse are more influential compared to sexual abuse and physical abuse. Knowing that physical abuse and sexual abuse may, and most of the time, they leave physical trauma or physical consequences on a victim's body. Okay. Also, one of the facts or our findings is that lack of association between sexual violence and mental health problems can be related to the low frequency of sexual abuse in our study. This could be an explanation of what we found, because the prevalence rate of sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, was very low in our study. Just 1.3 reported that they were victims. So lack of association between physical abuse and mental health problems can be related. So why physical abuse and mental health problems are there? We did not find an association between both. One of the explanations is that in real life, there is no association. In real life, there is no association in our study. Or recovery from mental health problems after recovery from physical trauma associated with physical abuse, meaning that even children who are physically abused as children, they leave, physical abuse may leave a trauma. And once that trauma is recovered, the psychological effect is gone. The psychological effect is gone. That's an explanation, because we did not find an association between physical childhood abuse and mental health problems. Socioeconomic factors did not buffer the association between neglect and emotional abuse on women's mental health status, meaning that it's a common problem. No one is immune or have immunity against these outcomes. And Jordanian women can be characterized as women of high tolerance. They can, however, that tolerance falls short in front of childhood experiences of experience, because I'm saying here that Jordanian women are women of high tolerance. They can raise children, work outside home, do their demands towards their family, towards their husband's family, towards the community, and in the meantime, all of that falls short in front of experiencing domestic violence, whether that violence was from the husband later in her life or as a child. Women with poor mental health status are prone to poor family functioning. When the woman experiences domestic violence, later she may experience mental health problems, and this will impact family functioning, because she's depressed, she's anxious, she's complaining of various mental health problems. Poor family functioning could rationalize adulthood victimization by the husband because of unmet family needs. If the woman is a victim of childhood abuse, she will experience, or she may experience, mental health problems. At that point, she will be a victim of, or she may be susceptible to violence from her partner because of unmet needs of the husband. So that's like a reason, or an embedded reason for her experiences of domestic violence from the husband in the future, if she's a victim one day. Poor mental health status could be a reason for violence by the intimate partner. That's what we're saying. These two factors could explain future victimization in adulthood. So, and this point explains the link between experiencing childhood abuse during childhood and women's experiences of domestic violence later, by the husband, partner violence. Recommendations. Future research needs to focus on the degree or severity of mental health problems if women experience different types of violence at the same time period, because the woman might be a victim and may complain or may experience mental health problems. Future studies need to deeply investigate the effect of women's characteristics and experiences of their mental health status, and efforts to address history of childhood abuse and mental health among young women who are in the very beginning of their marital relationship is necessary. Women has to be screened for as you screen the woman for, the patient in general, for blood sugar, blood pressure, family history of some diseases. They have to be screened about violence. Collaborative efforts are needed to come up with comprehensive plans to overcome negative impact of domestic violence, like awareness campaigns or screening or counseling. I mean, other services have to be implemented in the society or by some community systems. For the limitations, one of the limitations, we have a couple limitations. One of the limitations is sensitivity of the issues. Because when you ask about domestic violence or when you ask about mental problems, these are sensitive issues. So women may not declare their experiences. Misclassification of responses. It could be our fault or our bias. Selection of women attending primary healthcare centers may have affected heterogeneity of the sample because we focused on women attending healthcare centers, not women at homes, not women, working women or other women. And collapsing abuse victimization into two groups, as victimized or not victimized, may have obscured some of the significant findings. And as you saw, like childhood experiences of physical abuse was collapsed, sexual abuse also was collapsed. And thank you. Thank you.